My name is Brandon, and I am an artist and designer behind the brand Lactose Intoler-Art. I originally grew up in Oklahoma in a really small community where everyone kind of knows everyone. In my high school, there was only like 15 guys and like 15 girls. It was like a really small graduating class. That was really good in a lot of ways. There was definitely a sense of community there, but everyone was like really into sports, specifically football, and I was the only guy in my whole graduating class that didn't play football. I felt accepted by everybody, but at the same time, I always felt like a bit like an outsider, I guess you could say, but not so much in a negative way because I had friends, but I just felt very different. I originally made art through like this really old school paper that my grandma had given me. It was the like lined windows, huge boxy paper, like pre-Windows 95. I realized at an early age I was always really fascinated by things that came in a lot of variety. So like even like Princess Peach, I would draw Princess Peach, but I would draw like a blue-haired Princess Peach and then like a punk rock Princess Peach. I even grew up like raising exotic chickens. So anything that came in like a really big variety, I was always really fascinated with. Describing my artistic style, I was really interested in Nickelodeon when I was a kid. I always watched Nickelodeon. I always watched Rugrats, All Real Monsters, things like that. It's very nostalgic and very fashion inspired. And maybe also a bit like of what I wish I could see in fashion. Thinking of Japanese street fashion as kind of like this mecca of a place where people can go and gather and just do whatever they want isn't always exactly accurate. I think especially people that live abroad kind of think of like Harajuku, I can just totally do whatever I want and totally be myself, which is true, but overall I feel like culture in Japan, and especially like the mainstream business culture, is quite conservative, and I think a lot of people from the outside don't realize that. So I think sometimes it has actually watered down the different fashion tribes and the different street culture that has once happened here, and of course it's still very alive, but I think through my art I kind of express things that I kind of wish that I saw on the street, or maybe something I saw on the street but I kind of exaggerated a bit with fashion, because a lot of times fashion is really idolized. People think it will make you more confident or feel better about yourself, but it can also be of course very materialistic and very brand oriented and very selective and exclusive. And I kind of want to show a bit of that mixture of beauty and cute and kind of ugliness and a bit of grimy all kind of in one. And I feel like with my art too, I don't want it to look too extremely detailed. I don't want it to be too perfect, because I feel like in general people aren't really perfect anyway. I mean, if people want to make something that's really clean and really beautiful, I totally respect that, but I feel like with my art I'm kind of expressing something hopefully that feels a little bit real and something fun, or maybe even feel a little bit grossed out. Like for example, like drawing a character that has like really avant-garde, expensive looking, crazy fashion, but then like, I don't know, he's got like big moles on his face, or like unshaven chin, or like really hairy legs with like I don't know, like some kind of mesh tights over it. Just that contrast I find is very interesting. I first came to Japan in 2008 with my father. I just took a really short trip to Tokyo, and from that trip on I had moved to college inside or around Oklahoma City. I made more friends that were Japanese, more international, more friends that were into creative things, music and art and stuff like that. I went back and forth from Japan to the States off and on for several years, and I kind of started developing my brand. I originally started on MySpace. The first time I went, I saw a lot of interesting things, but it was in the middle of January, so it was freezing cold. But at that time I was so excited to be in Japan. Like anything remotely unique, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. But now like a lot of what I saw then probably wouldn't be interesting to most people even. I didn't really dress very unique, I feel, but I felt unique. I wanted to draw these people because they really inspired me, because I felt like it was more than just fashion, it was artistic expression. And so over time, experiencing Japan and coming back to the States and going back and forth, my personal style gradually developed in a very natural way. And I saw all these different tribes that were happening at that time as, again, kind of this fascination with things that come in different varieties. Although I had spent a lot of time in Japan before moving here, you really get a different sense of the culture after living for a while and trying to speak the language. And of course there's like so much more that I want to learn and need to know. I would always check like Fruits and Tune magazine, which are these two huge street fashion magazines that were like really awesome and are still really good. And I would always like kind of like idolize these people, like, man, their style is so unique and so cool. Like I really would like to actually meet them someday. And when I first came to Japan, I would like go into the shops and I'd be really shy and like speak super broken Japanese and pretty much made a fool out of myself, but people were super nice, and I was just like, I'm really interested in Tokyo street fashion. I really like your shop. Now things have really changed because I've spent so much more time in it, and I've really tried to network with people, and I've fortunately been blessed to do a lot of newer things and collaborations and stuff like that. And finally, like, now I'm kind of like running around with some of those same kids that I was like really like idolizing over, and I'm like so embarrassed now to be like, I've actually like followed you for 6 years, you know what I mean? No, actually some of them I've told, but it's really cool to actually get to be friends with some of those people that I really admired and respected for so long. So Lactose Intoler-Art was just kind of a play on words because I've always been severely allergic to milk. I'm actually not lactose intolerant. I'm allergic to the protein part of milk, but people usually ask me like, what does that even mean? And I try to explain in Japanese like and like all this stuff, and it just doesn't really come across, and they're like, okay. But actually it's fine. I feel like that also kind of works with the whole awkwardness again in the East meets West and not being exactly perfect. I'm actually really excited about the brand name in katakana and in English as well. I would say that I still would consider myself more of an artist illustrator than a fashion designer, but I'm really inspired by fashion. As my art developed, again, I kind of started working with fashion and learning a lot more about specific brands I was really inspired by. One of the earlier collaborations I did was with the Singaporean designer who I had followed. The brand is Reierson. She was living in Tokyo and inspired by a lot of the same things, and we ended up doing a textile collaboration together. So she designed a collection that was featured in Seoul Fashion Week for a Singaporean designer showcase. I did the textiles for that collection. So from that, I kind of thought, yeah, I would like to actually make more of my own clothing. And then I started experimenting with my own fabrics and textiles and things like that. And it's just kind of become a gradual process working into more of the fashion side of things. Personally, I don't have any training in fashion. I didn't go to fashion school. Like I had said, I've always been really interested in fashion, and fashion is personal self-expression, and using the mixture of art and fashion together made me want to try and experiment and do it on my own. One of the most exciting things that has happened with Lactose Intoler-Art so far is getting stock specifically in a shop called Hayato Chiri in Koenji. I had really been a huge fan of Hayato Chiri, and specifically the building that it's in, the Kitakore building. It's a place where, I don't know, I guess you could say a lot of indie and really underground brands were being stocked. There was a lot of really avant-garde meets, vintage meets, just really crazy stuff that was being bought by a lot of designers such as Bernard Wilhelm and Jeremy Scott and like Lady Gaga and Rihanna, I believe, had even been there. Hayato Chiri still is the shop on the base floor, and I'd always go in there like every time I would visit Japan, and I'd be so shy and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm here, I'm back again, and like there would be so many things that I wanted, and I would just be so inspired by everything on the racks. Finally, I got to the point where I started making some of my own necklaces. I have like a really kind of clean, plastic laser cut, high quality illustrated print that's been cut out that I find and mix with like Japanese use like himo belts and like obi parts. I finally had the stock ready, and it wasn't perfect, it wasn't all put together, but I was at the point where I was like, I'm ready to try, I just want to give it a shot. And I went in and I was like, this is what I have. And the owner, like, we had known each other at this point for a while, and he had followed my stuff online and he had liked some of it, so I had a little bit of confidence to go in, and I showed him, like, I was like, what do you think? And this was all in Japanese, so I was kind of nervous, you know, and he agreed to stock it. Maybe for a lot of people that isn't a big deal, but I had dreamed of the cool kids on the street that shop at those stores being able to access my work when I was so inspired by them. The idea of them actually wearing some of my stuff was so cool. So at the point where I was finally stocked there, it was really kind of a pivotal dream come true point for me, and it really made me want to continue fighting even if I didn't always necessarily feel super confident in things. One thing I really wanted to do with this collection was mix kind of fashion, of course, with illustration. Fashion meets art. So for some of you guys that have followed me online, you know that I also have a vintage shop online. I guess you could say the taste is kind of inspired by Japanese street fashion a bit, or just what I'm personally into as far as vintage at the moment. I really wanted to mix both the vintage and the illustration. So the way that I did that was I actually took pictures of garments that I own, textiles that I really liked. For example, a blue and black cow print. And I used that picture and then did the illustration over it and kind of mixed it together and actually made a sweater out of it. So you're kind of getting a mixture of both that fashion element, the vintage element, and then also the kind of crazy illustration with all the gross boogery details and stuff like that. So for a lot of these pieces in the current collection, I used a lot of texture, I feel. A lot of kind of, again, Rugrats 90s inspired textures. The background usually either has an image. For example, the lined paper that I had talked about earlier that I had always used when I was a kid, I actually used as a background for one of the sweaters, and on it I had quite obvious, I guess, street fashion, or maybe what I would like to see as far as street fashion. Kind of printed across the base of the sweater. So the sleeves have like hole punch like paper details down the side, but there's like a character here and then characters here. So it's kind of personal, I guess, mixing nostalgia and kind of mixing that 90s fun element with fashion and our culture together. I just really want to encourage anybody at all that wants to do something creative or something that they may feel is even weird or out of the box. For people that may not exactly feel like they fit in with their local group or community, or people that simply just want to do something fun, I would really challenge people to get out of their comfort zone. Just try to do something. If you don't think you can do something, you probably can't. But if you set your mind towards something positive, you're capable of doing whatever you want to do. And that might sound kind of cheesy, but like honestly, like sometimes I don't feel so confident and I feel like I'm not really doing everything I want to do. But I think the point is to keep pushing. If you're an artist or if you're doing something creative, nobody else can really create what you create. People can copy you and people can copy your style, but nobody else can actually create what you make. You're leaving something behind that will never be made again, and I think that there's something really special in that. But you guys should just go for what you want to do. I'll keep fighting for what I want, and I think that great things are in store in Tokyo, and hopefully for my brand and for you guys as well.